On YouTube, welcome everyone on Zoom. It is our final Water, Wetlands, and Watersheds seminar, our W3 seminar of the year, which is kind of crazy, or of the year. So this week we are very lucky to welcome to the seminar Dr. Ming Yi. Let's see, Megan, we good on the YouTube? Yes, we are good on the YouTube. Excellent. All right, so this week we have Dr. Ming Yi. Dr. Yi is a professor in the Department of Earth, Ocean, and Atmospheric Sciences and the Department of Scientific Computing at Florida State University. His research interests are groundwater numerical modeling, uncertainty assessment, karst hydrogeology, and environmental data science. He has his BS in geology from Nanjing University, and in 2002, he earned his PhD in hydrology from the University of Arizona in Tucson. After graduating, he worked at the PNNL, the Pacific Northwest National Lab, and the Desert Research Institute in Reno, and he joined FSU in 2007 as an assistant professor. Since 2016, he's been a full professor. He's elected fellow of the Geological Society of America and received an early career award from the U.S. Department of Energy. He also got the Walter L. Huber Civil Engineering Research Prize from ASCE, the Civil Engineers Society, and is an associate editor for the Journal of Hydrologic Engineering and Groundwater. So Dr. Yi, and also I had a chance to work with Ming on a project about OSTDS, as I'm sure we'll learn about a little bit in this talk. And it was great fun to work in we only had a less than a year to work on it, but I learned a lot from Dr. Yi during that time. And then we got to celebrate by having a swim in Rock Springs Park, if I'm remembering correctly. So that was really nice. Great to see you again, Ming. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Mike, David, for the introduction. Yeah, the swimming in the spring is really fun. I try to swim in every spring in Florida. Hopefully, we still have a good water quality.
Yeah.
But it's really nice to give a talk. I wish I could grab to Gainesville and talk to you in person, but online should be fine. Yeah, as David mentioned, we work on a septic project, and this is actually the project that I have started a long time ago on estimating the load of nitrogen from septic tank to surface water body. So we all know nitrogen is everywhere. 78% of air is nitrogen. And so the system used to be nitrogen limited, but since the industrialization, especially industrial nitrogen fixation, things are different. So we suddenly have too much nitrogen, it seems, in the system, with 200 million metric tons per year produced as a fertilizer. So that actually causes new problems to the environment. So one of them is eutrophication, and those are figures I found online to see eutrophication, but I assume you probably already know it, but it's definitely a big problem for that. You heard about red tide, and so it's happens very often in Tampa and in the River Lagoon. It's an international problem. So we have the same problem in Europe, in China, of course, in US, and we're in Florida. We have red tide problem, but you probably heard about hypoxic zone in the Gulf, which is the size of New Jersey, just a dead zone because of eutrophication problem. And so in Florida, we experience it. This is a news I found recently. It was about the deaths of manatees in the River Lagoon. So well, there has been 1,100 deaths of manatees. 10% of this population is endangered species, the mammals. People have been working on it. So they have a long fertilizer bans, but it doesn't seem solve the problem. And then the sewer or septic tank, it could be a solution, and that requires some research to do it. And so the nitrogen is not just for surface water, eutrophication in surface water is cause groundwater pollution too. Our body is really amazing to handle nitrogen. So you see from this diagram, so the bacteria, so we got food as a nitrate, and then the bacteria, our tongue surface convert or reduce nitrate into nitrate, and nitrate in our body, but as exceed get out of our body as a nitrate. So we have a nitrate in groundwater too. It causes cancers, and it causes the blue baby syndrome if a baby got a breastfeed from mom or get a formula from nitrate polluted water. So it got a very serious problem or that could deaths of the children. But where the source of the nitrogen, right? So I have this figure from US and China. Both countries I'm familiar with and also have intensive agriculture. So the figure on the left is this is there's some Chinese I found it online. So this is a production of a nitrogen fertilizer over years. It's been increase in China surpassed US in 1970s. And those maps about the very large scale nitrogen contamination. The figure for the US is the nitrate contamination, potential nitrate contamination for the shallow aquifer. You see in the agriculture area, you have a higher risk. In the China, those are also agriculture area, you have a high nitrate concentration, right? So fertilizer is definitely an important source, one primary source. But the question is there another source of nitrogen in our surface water and the groundwater? So here in Florida, we have a potentially the second largest source, that's the septic system. So 30% or more than 30% of our household use a septic system. It's just very efficient and very cost effective, but it treat virus pretty well, but not nitrogen. We don't have a statewide study. There's an estimation in 2012. It said septic tank is the second largest, produce this much of nitrogen into the system right after fertilizer. But this number may not be accurate, so I have a plan to revisit problem, have a statewide estimation, but not there yet. But in Chesapeake Bay, they have a very intensive study, lasted more than 10 years, more than a decade. So their conclusion is 5% of nitrogen come from septic tank. It's about 83 million pounds. And so in Florida, I guess the percentage could be higher because we have so many nitrogen septic tank for domestic water treatment. So this is what a septic tank is, just in case you have not seen it. So this is for on-site treatment of domestic waste. You don't need a pipe to pump or transport the domestic waste into wastewater treatment plant. So instead, you have domestic wastewater into this tank. And in this tank, there are so many biogeochemical reaction happens, and then you just release water into leach field, and then most of the water here in the leach field is ammonium, and then it go through the soil and enter groundwater, and from groundwater to surface water. And so the question would be, what's the load to groundwater and what's the load to surface water? So that's a big unknown, and it's hard to measure. It's not like concentration. Concentration, you can have a well and take water sample to measure it, but load you cannot measure it. You have to estimate it. And um, so to estimate the load, we developed a software. That was when I was in the Department of Scientific Computing, and then I transferred to the Department of Earth, Ocean, Atmospheric Science. So essentially, the figure on the left is a neighborhood in Jacksonville. It's called Lakeshore neighborhood, and the figure on the right is what the model production. This is one model production. It just the groundwater, the concentration of nitrate in groundwater, but the software actually produce more. And the software has a name, it's called ArcInlet. It's ArcGIS based nitrogen load estimation toolbox. I started this project a long time ago in 2011. I've been funded, so far it's actually this 2024. I have an ongoing project on this. And this project is only funded by Department of Environmental Protection. It seems very useful. They have been keep funding me to do development, and I've been working with 5 postdocs and 5 graduate students. And postdoc helped me to develop software, and graduate students mainly work on application. And the software has evolved over time. So we start from nitrate only, but we realize in Florida we have a shallow groundwater table, so we have to consider ammonium. I will give an example why we need to consider ammonium. And then we have nitrate and ammonium, so we changed the name N from nitrate to nitrogen. And very recently, this year, we add a phosphate. It's because phosphate is important in Florida too. And then this N evolved from nitrogen to nutrient. And so we have, but the phosphate feature is relatively new. So this is sort of a model or conceptual model behind the software, and then I'm going to talk about the mathematical behind it. So essentially, this is from Macrae. This is a septic tank itself, and this is a drain field. Sometimes it called leach field. Most of nitrogen is in the form of ammonium, and then it goes through a nitrification process. Ammonium become nitrate. And there may be a little bit denitrification that nitrate become nitrogen gas, but not a lot. But once it, because this is aerobic condition for nitrification, and denitrification require anaerobic condition. So, but once the water enters from soil into groundwater, and denitrification pick up because groundwater is pretty much anaerobic, and then there is a denitrification process, and nitrate become nitrogen gas. This is one very effective way to remove nitrate from system and become N2 nitrogen gas back to the atmosphere. But this depends on a lot of factors. So nitrification process may not be complete. That means not all nitrate become nitrogen gas, and the remaining nitrate can enter surface water. So we simulate the model simulate this Wiggles on process, the unsaturated flow and nitrification, denitrification. And then we have also groundwater flow and nitrification, denitrification too. And same thing, we simulate phosphate absorption, phosphate precipitation for both soil and groundwater. And then there's a also important surface process, but we have not touched it yet. So we only focus on subsurface processes in soil and groundwater. So to simulate the load, and you can do a very standard way or a classical way, it's called a reactive transport modeling. So you consider all kind of transport reactions, hydrological, biological, biogeochemical processes, and you do a very intensive modeling. So people have done this for years. Actually, one of my research area is groundwater reactive transport modeling. And in terms of nitrogen, there is a software developed by scientists in Lawrence Berkeley lab. It's called Top React, and React just simulate all the reactive transport. You can see they consider almost all reactions, biogeochemical reactions related to nitrogen. Then you have to consider carbon and oxygen, right? And based on this conceptualization, they have reaction network, and they have differential equations. They have monod equations to simulate nitrate. So if you want to do a very detailed, extensive study, this should be the way to go. But it doesn't guarantee the results are satisfactory. So here's an example. So here is a paper published by the developer of Top React, and you see the figure on the top. And so this x-axis is time, y-axis for this figure is degree of saturation, how much water in the system. And you look at the model simulation and experimental data, they agree pretty well. But if you look at ammonium nitrate, there's some change. So this figure in the middle is for ammonium. And so those lines with symbols are measurements, and the lines, solid line and dash line, are simulation. And you can see ammonium, there are fluctuation that cannot be simulated by the model, which is reasonable. Model is a smooth version of reality. But if you look at nitrate, there's a big problem. So here I highlighted the measurements at the different depths for this red line means the difference between observation and simulation is quite a lot, right? And the blue line means difference between observation and simulation at different depths is quite different, right? So that means this model cannot simulate really well about the observation. There's some difference. And so then it reminded me, what should we do in reality? There is a research needs, reactive transport modeling, and there is also practical needs. And especially if you think about DEP for the Department of Environmental Protection, they have a huge demand for regulation, but they're not a research organization. They probably don't have enough data or money or manpower. Let's say if you do reactive transport modeling, you have to have a PhD degree for sure. But not many people have a PhD degree in in county or in state or in consulting company, right? So we have to face reality. So how are we going to estimate nitrogen load for practical purpose? Not to study everything, but to study important thing. So this motivated me to develop ArcNet. So this is a simplified model. It doesn't consider all things involved in reactive transport of nitrogen, but it's not as oversimplified. That means all the processes important we consider in our model. For example, we consider groundwater flow and the transport and also reactions involved in nitrogen and phosphate. So this is just to increase the understandability of your model output. So the more complex your model is, the understandability of your model output just decrease because it's so complicated. But one thing we want to also keep in our model is spatial variability, because I'm a groundwater uh, hydrogeologist by training, we know the heterogeneity is so important it is. So we want to maintain our model to consider the groundwater or hydrogeological heterogeneity. And also we want to study or consider the spatial variability of septic tank. So here's the diagram. So if you have a septic tank, 4 septic tank close to a lake and 2 septic tank away from a lake, because of denitrification, probably there'll be a small amount of loading or some loading to the lake from septic tank close to the lake. But to the 2 septic tank that far away from lake, there may be no loading because of denitrification may take all the nitrogen away, or the bacteria could eat all the nitrate as an energy source. With that, and also we want to have a user-friendly software. And we choose a GIS because it can process all the data, especially spatial data, in a very easy way, and it can present results in a very easy way for people to see. And there is a lot of computing, but we make it behind the scene. So the users do not need to see the calculation, and they just see the interface before and after the simulation. So we started in 2011. This is the interface we had before using ArcMap. But now more and more people switching to ArcPro. So to 2022, DP funded us to do a renovation of ArcNet. The software was originally developed by using Visual Basic. It's pretty much like a fossil language now. E3 doesn't support Visual Basic anymore. And then we convert into Python, which is sort of like a trend in the future. And then we develop as a toolbox in ArcGIS Pro. And so we still have 2 versions, Map and Pro, but more and more are going to use Pro. So, and our Python code are fully open source, and you can download the source code if you want to do something by yourself. You can download the source code from GitHub, and we also prepare YouTube videos, and we plan to do a workshop. As YouTube videos are not available online yet, is pending on the approval from DEP, but I believe it soon will be available. We can put it online, you can watch it. And so this is another diagram of the output. This is especially for load. So this is a neighborhood in Jacksonville. It's a real world neighborhood. And then you can see the load. For example, this is a lake, the high, what you see here is a plume of nitrate. And the warm color means high loading near the lake, near the trench, and to the river. And this one is a load estimation. And so this for different water body, and those numbers are index of water body. And say, for example, 249, that's a lake, and you come here, 249 has a pretty large loading, which is not surprising. It's a low elevation, groundwater gonna flow from septic tank into this lake. And so this is a sort of conceptual view, and talk a little bit about mathematics about the software. So for the soil process, we solve for 1D vertical flow steady state. By the way, our model make assumption of everything in steady state, because this is pretty much for management purpose. Steady state, the Darcy equation, and then you have a top boundary as a hydraulic loading rates, right here from Dreamfield, and the bottom boundary is a constant head groundwater table. And so we solve the flow problem by numerical solution. And then for reactions, so ammonium we consider nitrate, and then we treat this as a first order kinetic. So it depends on the concentration of, I'm sorry, this for ammonium. And then those are reaction rates. For reaction rates, we use a approach. We say you have a ideal reaction rates. You can measure it in experiment, and in the field, the reaction rates may depend on a factor of temperature. This factor between 0 and 1, just like a correction factor, and also depends on the saturation. It also between 0 and 1, and those equations are from a literature review. And then for nitrate, nitrate, we consider denitrification. It requires carbon in it. And then we also treat it as a first order reaction. And again, the reaction rates is corrected by temperature and degree of saturation. This is for soil process. And then we also consider the absorption of ammonium, right? So here for ammonium, you can see we have a dispersion term, the advection term, and a reaction and absorption. So this term is for absorption. So absorption and nitrification. For nitrate, we have the term, the conversion from ammonium to nitrate, and also this term, sorry. And also we have denitrification. So the water just gone in the soil at the very bottom of the video zone. And then this is for phosphate. For phosphate is very similar. We have absorption of phosphate on soil particles, and also we have precipitation. And it's have a reaction with calcium, aluminum, and so on and so forth. And for absorption, we consider two cases. One is a linear absorption when the concentration is low. The other is Langmuir absorption when concentration is high, because phosphate concentration in groundwater in soil is always high, and groundwater is lower. And then you do the same. You have an advection dispersion equation. You can solve for it. So this is for soil process. It's a 1D vertical flow with reactions happening. And for groundwater, we consider a 2D flow. And so it's not this is a limitation for sure. But it's based on the Dubuis assumption. For Dubuis assumption, you would have hydraulic head a constant over vertical distance, so you don't need to worry about the stratification. So this is a limitation. Steady state is a limitation, and the quadris ready is a limitation too. And then we also made simplification. So we didn't solve for flow equation. Rather that we assume that water table is a subdued replica of topography, just like we see here. So you have a topography like that, and very often, in your groundwater table, gonna follow the topography. Except is a well-drained area. Otherwise, you're gonna see this based on the data you observe. So what we did is, rather than solving a flow equation, we smooth out the topography, and then we can get the shape of the water table. And this is one assumption. The other assumption is the Dubuis assumption, so that you don't need to worry about 3D flow. You just get a 2D flow, and you say the flow at every depth are the same. You don't need to worry about 3D. But this is an assumption we made. And then those are equations for groundwater. It's similar to soil. You have ammonium, you have nitrification, absorption, and then for nitrate, you have denitrification. And for phosphate, you also have absorption and precipitation. So it leaves phosphate become immobile. So then you solve all of those equations behind the scene. The user of ArcLens doesn't need to worry about it. It just they use it. They provide input file, and then click several buttons in ArcLight within the interface in ArcGIS or Pro, and then they got outputs. So so this is a flow chart. If you want to understand more how the software is designed, so this is definitely a way to digest it more. And then I will focus a little bit more on the application. So the software have been used by us and also by other people. So it's always a surprise. We search online about ArcLight and we found people using it. So this is an example. There is somebody in South Florida. He just prepared a tutorial how to use ArcLight. We didn't know it. We just found it about a month ago. Oh, there's a tutorial made by other people about our software, ArcLight. And we also use it too. So we use it for 7 counties across Florida, and every application is actually very important to us. So understand the problem. And so I will just use the example of Duval County to show the procedure of using it and what the data needs and what the results look like. So this is Duval County. They have problem of eutrophication. You probably see pictures online. The sometime portion of the St. Johns River become green because red tide or blue-green algae problem there. So they had a plan to convert septic tank into sewer. And for that, they have they pick the 20 neighborhoods and they have monitoring data. This is really good site for us to start with. This is the first field application we had. And so here's an example. They have this Red Bay branch, and they have 4 groundwater monitoring wells. And at each well, they measure hydraulic head, and so you see the fluctuation there. But overall, there doesn't seem there's a trend of increasing or decreasing. And also, they have a measurement of ammonium and nitrate concentration for each well. And then they have some isotope results indicating that the denitrification indeed happened. There is a isotope evidence for it, but that's all they have. And so if you want to do a modeling, you probably need more than that, right? So you have to know, say, what's the hydraulic connectivity, what's the porosity, so on and so forth. So this is the beauty of ArcLight. We can use ArcLight can utilize the data in the public domain. So that means if you assign a task to estimate nitrogen load in this neighborhood, although you don't have any resources to collect set specific data, you can still set up a model run using ArcLight. But if you want to make sure your model is simulating the site, you need calibration data. But even though you without any monitoring well, let's say drop you anywhere in Florida, and we should have public domain data for support as modeling using ArcLight. This is definitely reduce the amount of data needed for estimation. And so what ArcLight use is they use hydraulic connectivity and porosity from Circle database, which is all over the country. And then they use the topography data. It's all over the country, and also the water body. And water body is a little bit tricky. The National Hydrologic Database, they have the cover for the entire country, but the data are not accurate. The good news is we have a Google map now, Google Earth. We can correct it based on our needs. For example, for this Red Bay area, the National Hydrologic Database was not accurate, but we can correct the surface water body using Google data. And then if you have data, you will do a little bit calibration and I talk about that. So for this site, what we learned is that ammonium could be very important source. So when we first start the software development, we just assume the nitrification process is complete. That means all the ammonium is converted into nitrate in the soil, and then only nitrate under groundwater. But later on, when we look at the site, it's very different. And so I will give an example here. So here, this is a Red Bay branch, if you can see my mouse. And there is a monitoring well right here. So it's very close to the Red Bay branch. And so you can imagine the water table at this well will be shallow, right? So if you look carefully, you can see a person here that was a student. We worked really hard try to find out where this well is, covered by grass. And look at this well. So they have ammonium concentration. You look at here, the ammonium concentration is quite high. And for the other three wells far away from this red bay branch, that means water table is deeper. The ammonium concentration is almost like 0. That means all the ammonium became nitrate. But if you look at opposite, if you look at nitrate, for the other three wells, the nitrate concentration is high. But for this well, this monitoring well 1, the nitrate concentration is almost 0, just because ammonification process was not complete, just as we demonstrated here. And so this is a modeling results. So here, if your water table is here, and the blue line is ammonium, but the green line is ammonium, and the ammonium just decrease, and all ammonium become nitrate. That's the red line. And so if your water table is deep, you only need to worry about nitrate. But if your water table just shallow, if you move it up here, you're gonna have both ammonium and nitrate at the water table and in groundwater. And so that's actually the reason we add ammonium later on. And then for this site, we did a calibration. So we have data of hydraulic head and ammonium nitrate concentration. And then we design our model, have ArcLIT, and then we have model outputs, and we compare with the model with data, and it doesn't have a, if it doesn't have a good match, we have to do artificial or intelligence to adjust certain factors in our model to have a good fit. And so the results I'm going to present here is after the match. So here is the match. We have 4 wells, and then we have ammonium concentration, nitrate concentration. Because our model is steady state, so we average the measured concentration and compare with our simulation. You can see here the blue triangle is the average measurement, and the dots is a simulation. It has a reasonably good match. And so those minimum maximum are minimum maximum of the simulation. So this is ammonium and this is nitrate. It's not perfect because model is a simplified version of reality, but I would say they're close enough. And so those are simulation of nitrate and ammonium at water table, the concentration at water table. And here is a plume in groundwater, and you can see some plume already reach the surface water body. This is ammonium loading, and this is a nitrate loading. And so ammonium loading is large near the river because ammonium was not converted in nitrate near the river, but in the rest of area, it's already converted into nitrate. That's why it's almost 0 away from river. But nitrate just opposite. The loading of nitrate near the river is small, but away from the river is large. And if you look at the results, and this is a larger area. So this is small area. We did a calibration, and then we use a calibrate model to simulate a larger area. And so this is a larger area, and the green color here represent the St. John's River. And so if you look at the data, so we have the loading from ammonium, loading from nitrate. And so those are loading in the kilogram per day or to groundwater and loading to surface water. And also there is a percentage removal. Remember, we have nitrification and the denitrification. Essentially, denitrification remove quite a lot. But you look at ammonium, amount of loading of ammonium. If it's loading from ammonium and nitrate is 100%, the loading from ammonium is 18% for the small area, but 10% for the large area. So it's certainly a factor that you don't want to ignore for ammonium loading for this case. And this is another application we did. So this is a also an interesting site for us to consider or to study, and we also learned quite a lot from this site. And so this is in the St. Lucie County and the Martin County, and the actually the application is different. So in these 2 counties, they already had effort to remove septic tank. So those are locations of septic tank that were already removed. So that means they have a sewer or pipe. So people are not using septic tank. Instead, they hook up the wastewater into sewer pipe into a treatment plant. So, and then the county say how much credit we can have for this nitrogen, for this conversion from septic tank to sewer. So there is already no measurement opportunity. The conversion was done already, and then they came to DEP to ask for the nitrogen credit, and then DEP came to us, see if you can use a model approach to estimate the nitrogen credit to the two counties. And so we consider 7 neighborhoods where the conversion already happened. So this is a good thing about the ArcLIT. You can work on the neighborhood level. You can work on large scale, like a county level, but you can work on small scale, like a neighborhood, and all the data are available from public domain. And so we learned quite a lot by this modeling. First of all, the county were really happy about the loading estimation we gave them. That's meet their expectation. But we also learn a lot. So one results I showed it here. So this is the modeling results. And so this figure is very interesting. The x-axis is a soil type, drainage. So from a very poorly drained to excessively drained. So excessively drained would be pretty sandy soil and water flow really fast and not much organic carbon, not much denitrification. And the y-axis is the load estimation based on our software. And you can see, and also the numbers in the parentheses are number of septic tank in different soil type. And you can see very clear pattern. And this is interesting. Is so if you have a excessively drained soil, and then the loading will be high, which is not surprising, right? Water flow fast, not much time for denitrification, not much carbon for denitrification, right? So everything seems physically reasonable. And then we also look into the detail. And then we have a 7 neighborhood, and then we plot the loading. So loading here is to surface water and versus the mean length of flow path. And you can see the longer the flow path, the loading is smaller just because of denitrification. So the longer the flow path, there's more chance for bacteria to eat all the nitrogen. And then the shorter the flow path, you're gonna have a more loading, higher ammonium and nitrate concentration. And so this is another diagram for velocity. And you also see a pattern. The faster the flow, the higher the loading, which make perfect sense. The faster the flow, less time for denitrification to occur, and so the loading is higher. And then if you look at the simulated results, this makes sense too. We have 2 neighborhoods. One is Seagate Harbor and the other is Hope Sound. So this is in St. Lucie County. It's a very beautiful county. Been there twice for this project, and they're a very nice neighborhood like this. Everybody has a boat, and then they can just near on the very close to the beach. And as you see, the houses are really close water body. The water body is blue color, very close water body. So there is a really small distance between septic tank and the water body, and so there is not much chance of removal. So only 11% of nitrogen was removed by denitrification. But if you look at another neighborhood, it's a Hope Sound. So the houses are far away from water body, and there is a long distance for denitrification to happen. And so 71% of nitrogen was removed. Oh, I didn't say the red color means high concentration, and green color means low concentration. So this indicate removal could be, or we call it an attenuation, could be important. It could be 71%, it could be 11%, right? So then the question is, what should we do? Where you should put your house? And so this is a project we worked in 2022, and we also worked this year. So we published a paper, and Dave already saw the paper. So this is called a OSTS setback distance. So here's an example. So here's a surface water body, and here's your house. And one question is, where are you gonna put your house, right? How far should it be from the surface water body, or a river, or a lake, or a beach, or a ocean, right? So this is a horizontal setback distance. You want it to go really, really far so that all the ammonium can be removed by denaturfication, but you don't want to waste your land, right? This is horizontal. And the other one is vertical. So is say how high your septic tank or your drain field should be. And so if it's not high enough, there will be a lot of ammonium enters the groundwater. Once ammonium enters the groundwater, it has a very small chance to be nitrified because there is not oxygen in groundwater. And so the ammonium gonna load into your surface water body, right? So the distance between your drain field and your water table is actually very critical. And so if you read our statute, 2024 Florida statute, they have a requirement about horizontal distance. And if you read, you have different situation. And then if you read this statute, you're gonna find a magic number, 75 feet. It happens very several times. I highlighted. It is 75. So like use this one, number 6, 75 feet from the mean high water line of a tidal influence surface water body. Right. So then the question is this 75 horizontal setback distance have any scientific support? I'm sure this is from the best knowledge we have, maybe engineering judgment, but can we provide a little bit support or evaluation of the 75 feet setback distance? And this is for horizontal. And then another question would be, what about vertical? So we have not found language about the vertical distance. So essentially, this is a question not only was ignored in Florida. If you look at literature, most of people don't consider this vertical distance, but you're gonna see it could be important in the rest of the presentation. And then we did a study. So we picked 5 study area across states, and those each area, so it's pretty much along the the East Coast. Actually, we did several more, including one on the Barry Island and St. George Island here. But a report have not been approved by DP yet, so I cannot present it. But we have a total 8 sites in Florida, and the results are pretty consistent. So I'm just presenting my results based on the published paper. So we have a 5 study area, and then each area we have several sites with monitoring. For example, here, this is along the St. Lucie River. And this is one study area, but in this one study area, they have 4 sites where Professor Blender had a measurements. And he has monitoring well and has measurements of hydraulic head and ammonium nitrate concentration. So essentially, all the dots here represent a one study site with management of hydraulic head and concentration. So we can calibrate our model and gain confidence of our model for further investigation. So here is the results of calibration. And so the figure on the top is for one site we call Turkey Creek site, where actually blue-green algae is happening now. And so in this is right somewhere here. The Turkey Creek is right here. So this one has 2 sites, with which one is John's house, the other is a glucose house. So it's very small scale measurement. Monitoring it is at people's backyard. This one is the observation of hydraulic head. And this one is observation of ammonium, and this one is the nitrate concentration. And we have 2 houses, 2 sites for two different colors. You can see the match are reasonably well. It's not perfect, but I would say acceptable, especially for we don't have any set specific data. All the data are from topography, circle. All data are public domain data. And so the match between observation and simulation at this level, I think it should be acceptable. And so those are good results actually we present. There's some bad results. The match was not that good. But if you look at it from statistical perspective, they're not bad for all the sites. So here we have 5 study areas, and then for each area we have a minimum. And so the yellow color means the observation, and the blue color means simulation. So we have minimum observation, maximum observation, and the average value. And if you compare with minimum, maximum, and average value, so the average value match pretty good, and the minimum, maximum are smaller. So the range of simulation is smaller than the range of observation, which makes perfect sense. As I said, model is a smooth world of reality. So with this, we are confident. Um, that we can use our calibrated model to study something we call attenuation rates. So this is our definition of attenuation rates. So we have 3 definitions. So one is, let's start from vertical. So you have a concentration at the drain field, and then nitrogen concentration, and then you have a nitrogen concentration at the water table. And then you just calculate how much was reduced from drain field to water table. This is what we call the vertical attenuation rate. And then another one is a horizontal. So you have a concentration at the water table here, and then a moving groundwater, and then into surface water. And so this is the horizontal attenuation rates. And so ideally it should be along a flow path, but we don't know where real flow path is. And then we just use a linear flow path, just perpendicular to a surface water body. And then you have a horizontal, you have vertical, and you have total. So the total would be the ammonium or nitrogen concentration at the drain field and reduce to a nitrogen concentration at the surface water body, and then you calculate the percentage of attenuation. Right? So the higher we would expect for a setback distance, you're gonna receive a good amount of attenuation, like 90% of attenuation. So that would be good news to reduce the threat of nitrogen pollution to surface water body. So what we did, we use our model to simulate tens of thousands. It totally we simulate for 20,000 septic tanks over the 5 study areas. And then we come up with a figure like this. So at the x, so here, this is for one site. Again, this is for Turkey Creek site. And so on the top, we have a relation between the vertical distance and the vertical attenuation rate. And then we have 4 soil types, and you can see the behavior are different. And then for the horizontal, I'm almost done, David. For this line, this is for horizontal distance and attenuation, and for different soil type. And this third line is for the total. And you can see there is definitely some pattern. And so we say, let's fit a curve out of it. And so we come up with a empirical solution. This is something we really like because it's really simple to use. So for vertical attenuation rates, you only need to know the saturated hydraulic conductivity, which you can get from circle. And then the vertical distance. Would be the one you want to determine, right? And same thing for horizontal distance. Only need to know the distance and also saturated hydraulic conductivity. So this is very helpful if you look at the 75 feet, which is the magic number in the statute. And so for every soil, and at 75 feet in this Turkey Creek neighborhood, you can achieve at least 80% of attenuation. That means 80% of nitrogen is gone. And for sandy loam, you can achieve almost 100%. And for vertical distance, it seems the magic number is 2 feet if you want to achieve 80%. But this one is definitely not in any statute. It's just based on our research results. So with this, I will summarize my research. I'm promoting my software, Arclet. It's been a lot of development, a lot of time of my time, student time, postdoc time. The good thing about this software is you can run the software for anywhere, at least in Florida, using public domain data with topography, NHD, and circle data. And the results are not bad. I cannot say the results are perfect because it's just public domain data, but the results based on our experience is at least acceptable or makes sense. And for the setback distance study, we found out the vertical setback distance actually very important. You have to have enough vertical distance so that ammonium can be converted into nitrate, and then nitrate can be removed in groundwater. So with that, I will leave this notes here. So the Python version for ArcGIS Pro is on GitHub, has been approved by DEP to release. And we have our papers, and we are preparing for a training workshop. So it should be early next year so that we can offer training to anybody who is interested in this software. Okay, with that, David, I'm done. Any
All right,
questions?
thank you, Dr. Yi. It's a round of applause.
Thank you.
It's been really cool to follow the development of Arc Inlet over the years from when I first learned about it through now. So it's really like a very deep contribution. It's really cool that you guys are like developing YouTube videos and tutorials and workshops. I think that's an excellent combination of research and outreach. So, all right, so questions from the room or from Zoom or YouTube?
You can
I
still
have
see
a question.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead, AJ.
Okay, I don't know if this is like a minorly slow question, but on page 33, you have
Okay, very
on
specific.
page 33, you're talking about like the simulated results, the maximum and the minimum, and like I guess everyone is then you have like the average one. Is there a statistical test that you would run on this to like see like if it's like would you run a p-val, like a t-test on this, like say, okay, well, we want it to be significantly the same for the maximum, sorry, for the average in the simulation, which you want it to be significantly different for the, like, I don't know, like you said, like, okay, you can look at it, but like what statistical test would you run for this? Just because I don't see this type of graph often, so I was like, yeah, I see that he's telling me that it's, great, but
Yeah.
how do you know statistically that this was actually good results? Yeah.
Certainly. Oh, thank you for the suggestion. Yeah, we have not done it, but we should have done it. Just have a statistical test to see how far what's the probability that the two average just close to each other. That's a good suggestion. I think we can do it using F test or T test.
Okay, so you would just use like a t-test for this.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Just making sure, just in there.
All right, we have a question from Dr. Matt Cohen. So Matt says, great talk. The vertical distance, I guess the 2 feet that you suggest there say that all septic tanks in the unconfined parts of the Florida aquifer, so places where, there's like deep sandy soils, basically that the load, I guess to the aquifer in that case would be 0. Would you make that assumption?
Yeah, that's another good question. Yeah, so this is the ammonium, right? So you still have a nitrate, right? So let's say if you have, if I have a diagram, let's see here, probably have a diagram. So if you have a really enough setback distance vertical, and ammonium gonna become nitrate, and then nitrate enters groundwater. And if there is a really long distance between septic tank and surface water body, and you probably will have no load. Look at this. So it really depends on situation. So those are areas where there's no load. So they do not reach to this water body.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the question is in places with deep water table, you can get complete nitrification, right? Ammonia to nitrate. And you may have anoxic conditions in the groundwater, but you might not have sufficient carbon source to fuel denitrification. I guess that's kind of the second part of this. So in the settings where you have applied Arc Inlet, it's the water table is relatively shallow. There's probably plenty of dissolved organic carbon in the water to fuel denitrification. But if DOC is limited, then you may have limited denitrification, and you still get, we observe large nitrate loads under sources of either mineral or organic nitrogen loading, like agricultural settings, blah, blah, blah. So, Matt, I hope that was a good, at least a fair delivery of your question. But yeah, I think the idea in your model is that if you can get it to nitrate, then you have sufficient conditions for denitrification if the path is long enough.
That's
But
right.
that will require a source of organic carbon for the electron.
Yeah, exactly,
So,
exactly. If you don't have enough carbon, then you don't have bacteria can use it for energy or transfer of electrons. Yeah, it'd be ideal to have a site to do a on-site monitoring and to have real data. Yeah.
Dr. Clark, you have a question?
Sure, Ming, thank you very much. Great talk. Really helpful to get some science behind the questions of septic tanks. A lot of finger pointing, going on for a long time as to whether they are or not a significant source. And I think you've got a strong case here that we can, or at least you can model it. My question is with regards to how specific is the model tuned to a septic tank as the loading source? Could the model also be applied to something like a spray field, an agricultural spray field that has probably similar concentrations of load, maybe not the same hydraulic loading, but is it applicable to, let's say, larger spatial point inputs?
Yeah, that's a good question. We have been thinking about that too. And so the simulation now is treat the septic tank as a point source. So we got every point. So we have not, so it's one possibility we could do. We have not tried it yet. So let's say spray field, we could just for using the purpose using it, we could make the spray field as a grid. And then for each block, we can treat it as a septic tank. So that's one way we can use it directly. And another way could be have another solution, numerical or analytical solution for spray field. Yeah, so we have not tried that, but it could have some good use if we can do the spray field simulation or agriculture use.
Certainly another area of significant loading.
Yeah, certainly.
Well measured, well documented.
Yeah,
Thank you again. Good.
Sure. That's probably next study area.
Great, thanks. Let's give Dr. Yi another round of applause. Really excellent work. Thank you so much for wrapping up our semester for us. So everybody out there online and everyone who's in the class will be here next semester. It'll be our 104th semester or something like that, right? We're gonna, it's 2024. Yeah. It'll be something like our 104th semester of the wetland seminar. So please join us. Well, I'm sure we'll get a nice crew queued up for you for Wednesdays at 11:45. Thank you, Ming. We'll talk to you soon.
Enjoy
Congrats
the
on
rest of enjoy the rest of